Hey everyone, Sam here, otherwise known as FPL Pricey. In today's video, I'll be taking a look at my FPL team selection ahead of Game Week 3, including what I plan on doing with Cole Palmer. Hey everyone, welcome back to another video on my channel. Today we're running through my team selection ahead of Game Week 3, but before we do, let's take a look at my Game Week 2 performance. And of course, if you did enjoy today's video, I'd really appreciate it if you could hit like and subscribe, especially as I'm closing in on 5,000 subscribers now. It would be amazing if I could get there before we get to Christmas, let's say, for instance. Now, before we get on to my team selection, let's have a look at how I got on in Game Week 2 very quickly. 48 points from me. It was a little red arrow, so still not a great start to the season, down to 5.3 million. But as I've mentioned in earlier videos this week, it does seem like a lot of people are struggling to get going this year, and I'm not panicking just yet. I think as far as Game Week 2 is concerned, 48 points, whilst not a great score, I was one player, that being João Pedro, away from a very positive week. And I actually still got quite a few returns in my 11, whereas I think a lot of people who are maybe panicking a little bit more are because they only had one or two returners and one of them happened to be João Pedro. With me, I luckily got, I think it's 5 returners in my starting 11, and one player, Porro, who I'd normally be relying on, also returned on my bench. So in the end, Cole Palmer was obviously out. That brought in Anderson off the bench, the Fulham Anderson, not the Nottingham Forest Anderson, who I've already got in my 11. He got DEFCON in a 1-1 draw, so 4 points from him. Perfectly happy with him. Obviously, I could have got one extra point if I reversed the bench order and put Porro there, but I'm not going to lose any sleep over that. The odds of a clean sheet were always fairly low against Man City. In my back line, got a save point from Sanchez, but weak on the first goal he conceded, of course, a little bit annoying there. In my back line, 2 returners, Tarkowski and Estev, both got clean sheets. Tarkowski looks like a defensive contributions monster. Very happy that I picked him from the off. Less so with Murillo. Hopefully the next 4 fixtures will be more profitable for him, with 3 of those looking pretty good for clean sheet odds. And in the midfield, Salah and Ndai were the only 2 returners. Ndai, obviously, with a great, well-taken goal from a fantastic Grealish cross. He looked pretty good, but did get taken off a little bit early. Was on the bench for Everton's Carabao Cup game, so it doesn't look like there's any sort of injury there. And then, of course, Salah with a last-minute assist for the Ungamoa goal that won them the game. So Salah, little bit frustrating so far, hasn't looked quite as involved as always, but he is far from a sell at this point. It's something that maybe I'm just keeping a closer eye on for the weeks to come. Up top, Strand Larsen and Watkins both blanked, both been quite frustrating. Strand Larsen, I would say there's some green shoots, but there is also transfer speculation of him going to Newcastle. Bids are being rebuffed at the moment, but the transfer window is still open. So again, I've got my eye on that just a little bit in case I need to make a last minute move on Saturday morning if a transfer fee is accepted and he seems to be a player that needs to miss out of Game Week 3. Although, if he's the only striker that Newcastle did sign, I actually quite like him at 6.5 million in a Newcastle shirt. So that could be a really interesting one, and I wouldn't necessarily have to immediately sell him. But Game Week 3 would be problematic. And of course, we've got other problems like Cole Palmer, who is flagged, and a major doubt ahead of Game Week 3. Anderson in my midfield as well, I will just have a quick word on. That's 2 game weeks in a row that he's hit 11 DEFCON. So very close to an extra 4 points from him so far. So I'm perfectly happy with him. And Fernandes, well, a very action-packed game in Game Week 2. Penalty missed. And if he'd scored that penalty, I think we'd all be a lot happier with him. Obviously, I'm recording this Thursday morning after Man United have been knocked out of the Carabao Cup by Grimsby. A very poor performance from them. Bruno came off the bench, did score both of his penalties in the penalty shootout. So I think it's fair to say that penalties are secure for him, considering Cunha and Mbeumo both missed their penalties. So I think Fernandes is fairly secure on penalties, and I'm happy enough owning him for Game Week 3 against Burnley. Longer term than that, though, Man United assets in general maybe not looking quite so positive. Right then, so I've got 2 free transfers ahead of Game Week 3. It's a good thing I do as well, because there is my first major injury doubt of the season. That comes in the shape of Cole Palmer, who missed the West Ham game as a bit of a precaution by the looks of it. He pulled up with something in the warm-ups, a groin issue that he's been dealing with for a little while. And the results of the scan on Tuesday suggest that luckily it's quite positive. It's not as bad as first feared, and that he shouldn't be out for too long. However, Fulham might come slightly too soon for him. So he's a major doubt ahead of game week 3. It sounds like game week 4, there's a good chance that he'll be back up in contention to be playing. It also might mean that Chelsea might not take a risk on him in game week 3, and therefore he can rest up during the international break. They can withdraw him from international duty, and then he's got 3 full weeks to recover since the West Ham game, which by the time he gets to Brentford in game week 4, there's a good chance that he'll be fully fit again. So it looks like it's probably a 1 week issue, maybe 2 if we're really unlucky, but also possibly not even 1. There's a chance that he plays against Fulham, however slim. So if you're selling, or if you're considering selling, like myself, and you've got bench depth that could cover you for 1 game week, and it gives you the opportunity to start Palmer this week on the off chance that he does play Fulham, then I think I would probably look at trying to take that chance, considering it saves you a transfer and you'll still have Cole Palmer for a very nice looking Brentford game for game week 4. He'd also be one of the top expected point scorers for game week 3 against Fulham if he did play that game, however slim the chances, of course. However, if I'm looking at replacing him, I do have a few candidates in mind. I can drop the funds down in all of these options, which also provides me with opportunities to use my second free transfer to upgrade my forward line a little bit, or just have the money saved for a rainy day down the line. There are a few transfers I can make next week with that money as well. I've narrowed it down to 6 or 7 options. Those 6 are Cody Gakpo, Cunha or Mbeumo. Mbeumo also probably should make this list. Semenyo, Reinders, Sarr and Kudus. There are other good options, Harvey Barnes, Elanga potentially as well. But I think at time of recording, these are the ones I'm most focused on. I think ideally, I probably want Cody Gakpo out of all of these. The unfortunate thing is it's just not a good game week to be buying him against Arsenal at home. So it's whether or not I just go early on that move anyway, because I probably want him for game week 4. However, ideally I wanted to leave this transfer for another Liverpool player for game week 4 when I've got another game week of information, the transfer window's closed, and I can be sure that Isak hasn't signed, for instance, and I can then go more safely onto Ekitike or Gakpo because I know their minutes won't be shared or split a little bit more if Isak is also in contention to play for them. So going early has its risks on Gakpo. It's also not a great fixture this week. So ideally I would push that down the line to next week, and it would be transferring out Bruno Fernandes for him instead. That brings me on to Cunha. There is a chance that I double up on Man United. However, after seeing their performance against Grimsby and seeing that Cunha played the full 90 midweek, I'm a little bit less confident on him now. I'm also not bullish on doubling up on Man United, especially because it's a 1 game week thing, where the following game week, I'd probably want to sell 1, if not both of them. I could go for Mbeumo, because he's also a viable option in the Man United midfield. But obviously, same issue occurs where I probably only want them for 1 game week, and I'm looking to sell them the following week, which means not just 1 free transfer used here, but 2. So a little bit frustrating for the next 2 game weeks if I went there, but the upside does exist. You could double up if you think Man United are going to have a good day against Burnley after seeing the performance last night. However, it was with a bit of a B team. I'm less confident. I'm less bullish on it. So I think there are issues there. I've got Bruno Fernandes. I think that'll probably cover me off. Moving on to the other options, Semenyo and Sarr, both looking good as well. I would like both of them, particularly next game week onwards with Sarr in mind. There are Palace options that I do want to get to ahead of game week 4. However, Aston Villa away is probably not the worst fixture in the world to be hopping on. It's better than Arsenal at home for Gakpo. And if I was looking at making the move for a Crystal Palace player anyway, later on down the line, then I'm not really wasting a transfer by doing it this week. I'm just bringing that transfer forward, so it doesn't ruin my plans too much. So Sarr is probably my favourite of all of these options right now at time of recording, because it just brings forward a future transfer. The reason I don't love making this move this week is because Crystal Palace play in the midweek in their Europa Conference League clash to determine whether or not they get into the competition proper. So there's a chance that they could be a little bit knackered come the game against Aston Villa. So a move that I prefer to make in game week 4 when I've got a little bit more information and I'm moving on to a Crystal Palace asset ahead of their good game, but rather than before it, where there's always a chance of injury occurring and I've wasted a transfer. Kudus, Semenyo and Reinders are all players that are also on my watch list and I could make moves for them. Reinders in particular saves me a lot of money and it means that I can upgrade elsewhere, potentially even gives me a future route to Haaland quite easily with the amount of money that I'm saving. But I must admit, none of them were initially in my plans for this game week if Cole Palmer was fit. So I don't love hopping onto any of them right now. I like Kudus as a player. I think he could be a good asset, but I do want to see more goal threat. Reinders, great game week 1, fantastic player, but the XGI per 90 isn't too fantastic yet, and they don't have the best fixtures over the next stretch. And Semenyo, good fixtures, great player, great shot volume. It ticks probably more boxes than Kudus or Reinders for me. However, with Kluivert coming back, he obviously played in the Carabao Cup in midweek. Is there a chance that Semenyo gets pushed a little bit wider and Kluivert becomes more talismanic for them? Potentially. So I think out of all of these options here, the 3 that I'm most seriously considering are Gakpo, Sarr and Semenyo. Sarr seems like the best one to be going for this game week, considering the fixture's not too bad, and I want him next week anyway. But if I've got more conviction on which Liverpool player I want and it ends up being Gakpo, I could go for him a week early and get that transfer done because, again, a bit like with Sarr, it would save me a future transfer down the line as well. Okay then, so there are also some double moves that I could make, some combinations I quite like the look of, especially if we get news that Palmer is out for a little bit longer, because then it's kind of pointless holding on to him at all. I might as well downgrade the position and look at taking advantage elsewhere. One double move I do really like the look of is Palmer down to, let's say, Ismaila Sarr, although it could be any other midfielder really. Gives me 4 million in the bank to upgrade a striker. I could upgrade Strand Larsen potentially, but I do quite like the long-term fixtures. And if he stays at Wolves, I think it's fine. If he signs for Newcastle, also potentially fine as well, although I think that's unlikely at time of recording. It does, however, give me 4 million to upgrade my bench striker, Mark Giu, all the way up to either a João Pedro or a Chris Wood, with a bit of money still left to spend. So I think João Pedro becomes a very good option if Cole Palmer is out for a long time. Primarily, minutes are more secure because he'll be playing in the 10 where Palmer is no longer occupying that role. Delap can play up top, so João Pedro won't be benched or taken off early for Delap, and he won't be playing on the right, where Esteval could have been brought on for João Pedro in the past as well. So João Pedro's minutes are more secure. He also has a pretty decent chance of penalties as well, because Palmer's usually the penalty taker, but João Pedro was at Brighton. So I think João Pedro becomes a very good option if Palmer's out for an extended period of time. So this combination becomes particularly promising or particularly appealing to me if we get news that Palmer's out for 3 or 4 game weeks, maybe a bit longer. So with that in mind, it does give me a bit of a benching headache. I think most likely I'd bench Anderson, although that would be problematic because West Ham at home is a nice fixture. He's good on DEFCON. He could absolutely get an attack and return in that. So a bit of a benching headache this game week. And then moving on to game week 4, I've only got 1 free transfer where ideally I wanted 3 to start moving for Liverpool, maybe completing a triple up or at least get a double up there and get to a couple of Palace options. Now, with this particular combination, the positive news is I've already got Ismaila Sarr, so I think that's fine. I do still want Munoz though, so either Murillo or Tarkowski would probably go for Munoz, probably Murillo, considering they do have a good fixture after in game week 5, but I'm free hitting in game week 6, and then after that, it's not a great fixture run for clean sheets. So Murillo probably could go. Tarkowski also not amazing fixtures. However, he has been a bit of a DEFCON monster, so I would like to keep him if possible. So let's say Munoz in for Murillo for now. But then any other move I make for a Liverpool attacker would come with a hit. So Bruno Fernandes against Man City away, probably holding on to him for that if I go for Munoz. Or I do the reverse and I sell Bruno Fernandes for Gakpo, Wirtz, whatever. But I can't do the Munoz move and I'm looking at holding on to Murillo for a little bit longer. So I'd like to save the transfers if at all possible. However, I think it's at least wise to have the potential route set up if I hear that Palmer's out for a little bit longer. And I don't hate that route. It does give me a benching headache most weeks though. And of course, it limits me in future moves, and potentially those future moves have slightly more upside than the moves I'm making this week as well. So it's something that is playing on my mind ever so slightly, but it's an option that I'm open to. Right then, so on to my team selection for game week 3. And as it stands, I haven't made any free transfers. Cole Palmer is still in my 11. And however slim the opportunity is for him to play in game week 3, I still think there is at least a chance. It's not been completely ruled out that he will play Fulham. And of course, he might be rested for the international break as well. He might not play, but all of the news that we've heard so far is that it's a fairly minor thing and he should be back relatively soon. So game week 4 against Brentford, he's a player that I'd really like to own for that week, especially if loads of people are selling him. Could be a little bit more of a differential for me with a good fixture in game week 4. It's also worth noting that on the slim chance that he does happen to play Fulham, I'm admitting that it is slim, but he could play. It's not ruled out. If everyone else has sold him and he's in my starting 11, then I've got myself a player with fantastic upside, one of the best options for game week 3, if he does indeed play the match. And if he doesn't, then I've got Anderson coming off my bench away at Chelsea, not a great fixture, but is it a nightmare to have Anderson coming off my bench? I would argue not. And the reason for that, if I quickly go over to my live screen, Solo Analytics here do a CBIT or DEFCON percentage ranking. So if I go down to here and bring up Anderson for this week, got a 44% chance-ish, so one in two chance almost of him hitting DEFCON for game week 3. With that being said, so let's average that out as 1 point rather than 2 for a 50% chance. We could be looking at a 3-pointer there pretty easily for Anderson. And any player that I bring in for Cole Palmer this game week, it's one less free transfer I've got down the line in game week 4. I've already mentioned I want a couple of Palace assets. I want another Liverpool player for the Burnley fixture. If I've only got 2 free transfers or even 1 free transfer to use in game week 4, then I might need to take a hit to get to the side that I really want to, or I just used the free transfers that week. Well, I might need to take an extra hit down the line because I've got one less free transfer to play with. So I am hesitant to remove Cole Palmer because it sounds like it's a fairly short-term thing. I have got plans in place for if it sounds like he's out for a little bit longer, or there's mystery surrounding it where we just don't know how long he's going to be out for. I think most likely I'd move for Ismaila Sarr because it also helps me with my future planning for game week 4 onwards. But I am very tempted to just try and resist selling him on the off chance he does play. And then, of course, by game week 4, I'm going to want him back anyway. Elsewhere in my side, I am going to captain Bruno Fernandes, I think. Obviously, Man United were not good in the midweek against Grimsby. Fernandes came off the bench. He scored both of his penalties in the shootout, whilst Cunha and Mbeumo both missed their penalties. So I think he's secure on penalties. His minutes are going to be secure as well. And you'd hope that Man United are able to bounce back a little bit and take this match a little bit personally, if anything, to really try and prove a point. I don't really want Man United assets long-term, so I'm not looking at doubling up on their midfield now after what we saw against Grimsby. And honestly, Bruno is probably going to be a sell for me fairly quickly after game week 3, but it's a good enough fixture. And with the DEFCON threshold that he tends to hit pretty commonly with penalties, and the fact that Burnley will probably deep block and Bruno will be able to get forward a little bit more, I do like him as a captaincy option. Vice on Salah because he's just never a bad option to have, and I'm really happy with my 11 elsewhere. Sanchez in goal, Fulham at home, I think is fine, if nothing spectacular. My defense, I don't think there are many defenders I prefer having in game week 3, honestly. Maybe Dorgu, potentially, at home to Burnley, good clean sheet odds there. But Porro, Tarkowski and Murillo, that's a fantastic combination, in my personal opinion, for game week 3. So no moves needed there. Midfield, Ndai and Anderson are the two that I haven't talked about, both with good fixtures. Wolves are leaking goals, and Anderson has at least a chance of getting something at home to West Ham. Obviously good on the DEFCONs as well. Up front, I'm not losing faith just yet in Ollie Watkins or Strand Larsen. I think Strand Larsen's long-term fixtures are good enough to hold on to, especially if he doesn't leave for Newcastle. I will obviously keep an eye out on that. And Ollie Watkins, it's been a slow start for Villa. and Ollie Watkins, but I do still have faith in the manager and the team to come good. And they've got a great run of fixtures coming around the corner. So I am reluctant to sell him just yet. However, at 9 million, it is a lot of money. And you've got João Pedro, you've got Chris Wood waiting in the wings, doing pretty well, that I could move to with also good fixtures to come. So I'm going to leave him for this game week. I have a feeling that Crystal Palace are going to be a little bit leggy after their midweek European tie. So can Ollie Watkins capitalise? In my personal opinion, yes, he can. So fingers crossed for a bounce back from Villa in that one. And hopefully by the time we get to game week 5, we're going to be very happy owning Villa assets with 2 promoted clubs in the next 3 game weeks from game week 5 to 7. Right then, that's all I have time for today. Hopefully my logic around Palmer makes sense, but I'm fully willing to accept that most people are looking at selling him. I've obviously presented my favourite options, and if he sounds like he's going to be out for a little bit longer, then of course I'm willing to move on myself as well. But I'm currently aiming to roll the free transfer, give myself a third one for game week 4 where I can be a little bit more aggressive with my moves. If you enjoyed today's video, I'd really appreciate it if you could leave a like and subscribe to the channel. And as always, if you've got any questions ahead of the Game Week 3 deadline, do feel free to drop them in the comments below and I'll try and get back to you as quickly as possible.